All right, so we're going to move on to our Tier 2 wide receivers and discuss those here for a minute. So with Tier 2 guys, we're talking about the Randall Cobbs, the Antonio Browns, the Pierre Garçons, the Vincent Jacksons, the Wes Welkers, Larry Fitzgeralds, Michael Crabtree type guys. So we're going to cover some of those that we think the audience would want to hear about. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We talked about Jordy Nelson in that dynamic Green Bay offense with one of the most elite quarterbacks we've seen in a long time, Aaron Rodgers, throwing him the ball. Let's talk about the guy on the other side of the field, a little younger player, very dynamic, tons of upside, and that's one Mr. Randall Cobb. So ADP has Randall at 10th in PPR off the board. Jay, you have him 9th. What are your thoughts about Randall Cobb going into 2014, coming off kind of an injury-plagued season?
Well, exactly that. The injury was an issue. Good news, though, for people who are looking to draft Randall Cobb this year. The Packers want to take him out of the return game. That is excellent news. We do not want him in the return game. The only thing you might get out of that is if he scores a touchdown, and it's not going to matter. So out of the return game is good for his health. He gets to be fully devoted to the passing game, and I think he's a legit threat for 100 catches this season. Like we said, a broken leg was the story of his 2013 season, but prior to that injury in Week 6, this guy was picking up where he left off in 2012. He opened the year with back-to-back games with more than 100 yards. In 4 full games, he caught 25 passes, he gained 403 yards from scrimmage, and he scored twice. Then he took a low hit, had bad consequences. I don't think he's very injury-prone. It was a broken leg. As long as he lets it heal and does his freaking physical therapy, the guy's going to be fine. With a QB like Rodgers throwing to him, I think he's in a great position to throw up wide receiver 1 numbers this season. I think with James Jones leaving and Cobb fully healthy, I think we'll see a career season out of him.
Jimmer, do you have any thoughts on Mr. Cobb?
Going back to the same thoughts with just Aaron Rodgers in general, I'm just nervous. I don't know if I can bet on him being a top 10 guy, in my opinion. I think everything says that he will be. And so basically preseason and drafting-wise, you kind of got to believe he could be a top 10 guy. But, I mean, if he falls to me, I'll take him. But he's not a guy that I'm actively trying to draft.
Yeah, I think, to me, this is like a Denver offense. It's like a Saints offense, with James Jones gone and questionable stuff going on at tight end. I mean, these are the 2 main guys in that offense, and it can, Aaron Rodgers can definitely feed these guys both the ball. I mean, we've seen it in numerous offenses. They can both get 100 catches and have dynamic seasons. So, because, Cobbs hasn't been in the league all that long, we can't say he's injury prone. A broken leg would have happened to anyone. I mean, it's a fractured bone that will heal and be completely fine. So, better that than an Achilles or something. So, I'm definitely high on him too. Jay's got him at 9th. I've got him at 10th. I think him and Jordy could both be top 10 guys easily going into the season, especially with a guy like Rodgers throwing him the ball. So, yeah.
By the way, one thing I will add into that passing game is they just signed a kid named Colt Lyera. He's a tight end. The kid was a beast at Oregon, by the way. If he can stay out of trouble, he is a huge factor moving forward. I'm not saying this year, but I'm saying the year after. He could be a major fantasy player. We'll get into tight ends later, but just my little plug.
What is it with tight ends and having to stay out of trouble in the NFL these days? Huh.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and move on here to another guy who had injury issues last year. Came back in, did some stuff. San Francisco 49ers, Michael Crabtree, was ADP of 15th. Rob, you got him at 12th. So let's see what you have to say about Mr. Crabtree.
Yeah, I'm pretty high in Crabtree this season. One thing I like about he's entering the final year of his rookie deal. He's going to have to, really put an onus on putting up some really good numbers so he can get that really lucrative contract next season. Yeah, you mentioned he came off Achilles injury. He did. He missed the first 11 games of last season recovering from that Achilles. But these injuries like ACLs and Achilles are not what they used to be. They can fully come back from these. We've seen it. There's examples of it. He's played. He came back and played the last 5 games of the season. He played very well, so because of that, we know he's going into 2014 100% healthy. I went back and looked at his numbers in 2012 and his full season with Kaepernick there, throwing in the football. Again, it is a run-first offense. They run first. They play good defense, and that's kind of their mantra, similar to Seattle. That's why those guys always battle it out there in the NFC Championship game. But when you go back and look at those, in 2014, Crabtree caught 85 balls for over 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. That would have put him 14th this past season as far as his numbers go. But what I really like about this, if you look back at the targets, the percentages of 2012 when he played that full season, of the 304 targets thrown by Kaepernick in that year, 155 of those went to Michael Crabtree. That's 51% for those of you out there doing the quick math. So over half the time, he's throwing the ball to Crabtree. He clearly loves this guy. They have a great chemistry. I think the addition of Stevie Johnson, I don't think it affects Crabtree numbers. I think it just kind of helps, it makes his own fantasy value pretty much irrelevant now, but it helps Kaepernick as a whole. It helps that whole offense. It might open things up even more a little bit for Crabtree. He's going to be so heavily targeted in 2014. So I've got him listed for 85 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 10 touchdowns in 2014, which will cement him, at the bottom end of my top 12.
Yeah, I'm kind of myself staying away from San Francisco's offense this year, but if I had to have one of their wide receivers, it would be Crabtree. I think he's going to be the man this year. I just don't feel good about their offense this year. I don't know why, just personal preference. But yeah, Jim, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I'm in the same thought process as you. I mean, Kaepernick and that whole situation. I think Crabtree's going to get a lot of catches. I think he's going to get, that 80, not quite 100 range. But I just personally don't see him blowing up. And I've seen him get hurt so many times. So that's all I'm going to really say to that.
Yeah, like I said, I've got him at 12th. If you can get him as your wide receiver 2, I think he'd be a fantastic wide receiver 2. All right, we're going to move on to the most sensational rookie wide receiver of last season for sure. Unfortunately for us Broncos fans, he played for the AFC West Chargers. And this is one Mr. Keenan Allen. ADP in PPR leagues has him 12th going into this season. The Jimmer has him at 13th, just one spot below the ADP. So, Jimmer, I know he's a Chargers fan or Chargers player. We can put that behind us here. What do you think about Mr. Keenan Allen?
Yeah, let's talk about that first, man. He's a cocky little punk. I mean, I'm sorry. I've known him since he was back at Cal, and I just don't. Oh, God. There's part of me just hates him so much. So let's go back to history real quick. Josh Gordon had a massive breakthrough between his rookie year and his second year. Okay, he went from top 20 to top 5, number 3 last year. I mean, that's a massive jump. Is Keenan Allen capable of that? Okay, who's throwing to him? Phillip Rivers, arguably the most inconsistent year-to-year quarterback we've ever seen. I hedged all my bets on him, thinking that he would bounce back 2 years ago, and it cost me 3 leagues. All right, so just saying that, keeping that in mind, roughly all the pros and all the guys that are in fantasy world, they're in this 60-40 split where they think he's going to do better than his draft position, but everyone else is kind of saying, like, man, that's a huge gamble. We don't see it. 71 reception, over 1,000 yards. He obviously did not play early on, so that's something to kind of consider. This year, I think he's going to be a bigger target, and I think he's going to be a little more focal point moving forward, so I don't think that's an issue going into this year, so you can't really look at the full history of that. When he was at Cal, he was the man, so he's kind of used to being that. Let's talk about the Sum ADP. They have him 9th overall, and that's the highest I've seen him, and that's in the second round. That's a gutsy risk, in my opinion. I don't see him jumping into the top 10 round this year personally. I want to see a little bit more of him, so based on what happens this year, that I think will make my decision next year. So he's one of those guys that I believe is kind of a wait and see. If you feel good about him, great, draft him. You draft him. I'd rather watch him on your bench or your lineup than I would have him on mine. So that's my opinion. So Jay, thoughts?
I will draft him, Jim. I will, and you will be seeing him on my active roster the week I play you and spank your little ass all day.
Yeah, you'll play him when he's hurt.
There's nothing little about his ass, all right?
Yeah, that is true.
He is a large man.
Listen, I'm liking Keenan Allen this year. I think he's going to be a pretty good wide receiver 2 with a possible upside of being a wide receiver 1. If people want to sleep on him and pick him up 12th or 13th, that's fine. I'm going to take him a little earlier than that, I think. I think he's gained the experience. I think Phillip Rivers is going to be just fine, and they're going to feed this kid the ball like crazy. So, yeah, I'm definitely going with him. Jim, you're going to regret not taking him.
Yeah, I've got him at 14th. I don't know if that ranking is just based on what I saw from him or if it's just kind of the hype on him. I mean, the guy, he did kill it in his rookie season. He wasn't a high-round draft pick the year before. Was that more about just his opportunity? They had some injuries there at the beginning of the season with the wide receivers at the Chargers. So, he's not going to hide from anyone this year, that's for sure. People know what he can do. He's going to be the number 1 guy in that team. The number 1, corner is going to be on him, double team, and so forth. So, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic. I hope he does well. I think it's just good for fantasy with a guy in his second year, doing well and following up that rookie season with another good year. So, I wish all the best for him, except the 2 times a season that he plays my Broncos. So, we're going to move on to another guy who didn't reach expectations last season. It was really nothing to do with him personally. It was just the fact that his quarterback threw so many picks and was knocked down so much with a horrible offensive line that he couldn't really get much done. And that's one Mr. Victor Cruz, a guy who was definitely a wide receiver 1 and drafted as such a couple years back. His current ADP in PPR leagues is 22nd wide receiver off the board. Jay, you feel pretty close to that, having him ranked at 21st. So how optimistic and comfortable do you feel about drafting Victor Cruz as a potential low-end wide receiver 2 moving into the season?
Well, I don't know that I really want him as a wide receiver 2. I think he's going to be all right. He's still going to be used. His knee's supposedly fully recovered. The general manager has actually said that Cruz is a strictly inside receiver. I think that actually helps Victor Cruz because Eli Manning, as we said, this guy spends a lot of time on his back and he's not having a lot of time to throw the ball, so he's still going to have to dump it off underneath a shit ton. So if this guy's inside, he's going to be seeing the ball a lot more than guys downfield because, frankly, Eli Manning's just not going to have the time to throw the ball down the field. So, yeah, low-end wide receiver 2 at best is what I see Cruz end up being just because I think the Giants are going to be so awful. I would probably feel more comfortable with him as a flex player, definitely, though. That's why, I've got him just outside the top 20.
Jimmer, any thoughts on Victor Cruz this season?
He's one of those wild cards where you don't know. He might end up in the top 10 at the end of the season, which would just be everything that we've seen, everything that we heard, everything that we understand from our perspective. It says exactly what Jay's saying. He's a low-end wide receiver 2, and he's realistically a flex player. But at the same time, I feel like he's a complete wild card where he literally could be a top 10 guy. And you're like, didn't see that coming. Thank God I had him on my team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got the talent level for it. We just got to see if Eli is going to pull it off. But really, that's enough about him anyway. I'm going to move on to T.Y. Hilton. He interests me a lot. Everybody in Indianapolis interests me a lot this year. Anybody that Andrew Luck's thrown the ball to is interesting to me. Rob, you've got him at 22nd. His ADP is 21st. So what are we expecting out of T.Y. this year?
Yeah, this is an interesting guy. Last year he had 82 receptions, over almost 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns. But it was a weird season for the Colts. I mean, Reggie Wayne missed 9 games because of an ACL. They didn't have a whole lot behind him. T.Y. Hilton was kind of force-fed the ball, and he stepped up and delivered. That guy did well. But the interesting thing going into this season is that Reggie Wayne, given I know he's 40 3.5 years old next Monday. But the
That's
guy's
not nice.
he's still relevant. The guy's a stud. He's been doing it year and year and year again. Again, ACLs are not what they used to be. He's going to be a possession receiver. Probably won't run a ton of mid-level routes, but shorter routes and be a possession guy, kind of like maybe Anquan Bolden is for the 49ers. But they also added a guy, Hakeem Nicks, and I don't know what to think about Hakeem Nicks. He used to be a wide receiver 3 or so years ago. He's been plagued with some foot injuries as well, but he's coming supposedly healthy into this coming season. So you've got those two guys, the addition and coming back for Wayne to add into the mix with T.Y. Hilton. So, I think, I don't think Hilton is going to see a ton of double teams because of this, which is good for him. And what I actually see happening here, is I see T.Y. Hilton playing that downfield threat role, very similar to Deshaun Jackson. I looked up these guys' metrics, and they are almost identical in size. They're both 5'10". They're both about 190 pounds or so. But the funny thing is, which I wouldn't have assumed this, but T.Y. Hilton actually ran a faster 40 time than Deshaun Jackson did back in his rookie season. So, and he's, of course, a lot younger. So he's very dynamic, very quick. I think he's going to be used more of a downfield threat. So I think at the end of the day, T.Y. Hilton's catches might go down because of Reggie Wayne coming back and the addition of Hakeem Nicks. But I think his yards and touchdowns could definitely go up, especially with Andrew Luck throwing him the ball. So at the end of the day, I see T.Y. Hilton as about 70 receptions, a little down from last year, but I see him at 1,150 yards or so and about 9 touchdowns, which to me puts him as a low-end wide receiver 2. And if you can get him as your wide receiver 3 / flex position, I think that'd be a fantastic spot for him in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can get that guy as a flex play, man, you're doing really well. He's going to be fun to watch this year, too. I think the whole Colts offense is going to be really fun to watch this year. But I would definitely rank him in the top 20, I think, as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah. Jim, any thoughts on T.Y. going in this year?
I'll get into it with Reggie Wayne, and we'll talk about Pep Hamilton then, the offense coordinator.
Okay. Well, let's move along then to the guy that the Jimmer just simply can't get enough of. I mean, man crush doesn't even get to the point that the Jimmer is on this guy, Mr. Cordell Patterson. I mean, just a beast over there in the cold realms of Minnesota. ADP has got him in PPR leagues at 17th. The Jimmer, I don't know, you have him at 19th. That just doesn't even seem right. You should at least have him at 16th to get under the ADP. So, but anyway, what do you think about this dynamic rookie of last season going into his second season there in Minnesota with possibly and hopefully a new quarterback?
Party people! I love Cordell Patterson. I think he's great. I think he was a big steal for me this last year. He's one of those guys where, man, you just hope that there's an actual quarterback throwing to him. Is Teddy Bridgewater that guy? Hell no. But is there a chance for him to be doing okay? Yes, I think he's still going to get a lot of catches. And quite frankly, they're making offensive plays for you. Anytime they're making offensive plays for you, I mean, you're going to get the ball. I mean, he's going to score, at least a punt return, at least a kick return this year, if not a couple times. He's just one of those rare talents that is so elusive and he's so good that, you can't help but do it. So realistically, outside of all my thoughts and all that process, he has the wide receiver 1 talent. He has the skill set to be that, but he's definitely a wide receiver 2 with just massive upside. And that's my opinion. So again, that's why ADP has him at 17th, and that's why I'm kind of a little hesitant, is because of the quarterback situation. I think he's still going to get 1,000 yards. I think he's still looking at 70 catches this year, and that's not completely unrealistic, and especially in this league. I mean, the other big consideration you have to have is Adrian Peterson. If Adrian Peterson stays healthy, it's going to be a lot harder for him to get these numbers. If Adrian Peterson doesn't stay healthy, my God, pick this guy up, trade for him, because his fantasy value is going to skyrocket if ADP doesn't stay healthy. And you got to look at the scoring for your teams with this guy because, I mean, if you can get a point or two off of him or 6 points, every other game on some punt return for a touchdown, that's awesome. That's what he's capable of. So that's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, I don't quite have the creepiness attachment that Jim does to Cordell Patterson. I've got him outside the top 20. I just don't think Minnesota's going to be all that great outside Adrian Peterson guys this year. I don't see anybody up there really making much of an impact on anybody's roster. So I'm kind of staying away from him unless it's Adrian Peterson. That's the only person in Minnesota that I will be having anything to do with. Sorry, Jim. I'm sorry, man.
Fine.
Yeah, I feel similar. I've got him I've got him in tier 3 actually. I think people are way too high on this guy. He won't be on any of my teams, not because I don't think he's potentially dynamic. It's just he's going to go way before I'd be willing to take him. Bridgewater, I mean, it can't get any worse. I mean, Matt Castle and Christian Ponder, we all know Ponder's only there because of his wife, because she's hot. But
gorgeous.
Yeah.
But so I think the quarterback play can only get better, but still at the end of the day, him running around the field getting handoffs and punt returns and all that sort of thing, it just probably to me increases his chance of getting hurt. And I just, he won't be in any of my teams, but he is dynamic. He's an exciting guy to watch. I'm just interested. I'd just rather sit out this season on him and see kind of what he does, and maybe take a harder look at him in 2015. So that's what we have for tier. That's going to do it for our show today. Our thoughts on wide receivers going into 2014. So on our next show, we're going to be breaking down and ranking that difficult mid-tier quarterback section, the tight end sections for 2014, and comparing our rankings with current ADP on fantasyfootballcalculator.com. So tune in to see how we match up. Again, we're live every 2 weeks in the off season. We'll be going to every week once the season gets closer. So tune in a couple weeks for our next live hangout. In the meantime, you can go to redzonewarriors.com where you can watch previous episodes, see our rankings, and subscribe to the show via iTunes. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and tweet us your fantasy football questions at Red Zone Warriors. So for the Cushman and the Jimmer, I am Rob the Commish Smith. And remember that if you are taking a fantasy offseason, then you are already losing. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.